Hi folks, you with us today, Tacitus about your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a Western world malaise, and I guess it's come to be more pronounced during and since the COVID debacle, but it's the payment of sickness or disability, depending on which country you're in, the sickness or disability pensions, like it's equivalent of sort of an unemployment benefit, but paying people to not go to work on the basis that they can't work or they're impaired in some way. Now, in a country like Australia that's got sort of roughly a workforce of give or take 13 million, the over a million, it's alleged, and it's a bit hard to get precise figures given the multiple sort of classifications, sub-classifications, but over a million people of working age not working, and it's even worse in Britain. I think it's something in the order of 2.5 million, and again millions in the United States and so on. So why is it that so many people of working age are, something in the order of 8% of the workforce are, this is the age between 21 and I think 64. So 8% of that age group are have some sort of impairment that prevents them from working. That seems quite astonishing. Now, if you look at the classification for what unemployment is, if you have 1 hour a week of paid employment, you're not unemployed according to the government. Now, the underemployment in all across the Western world is absolutely massive. And then there's a third issue here, which is the increased cost of living. Now, given the increase in rents that were $400 a week pre-COVID are now $850 a week. This is the extent of inflation certainly in the inner city, middle distance, and even some of the outer suburbs now are being affected by these huge rent hikes. The cost of energy, electricity, petrol. And the cost of food. Now, the cost of food and groceries is ongoing. There hasn't just been one hit where it's all gone up. And I noticed, for example, just over the last few weeks, items that we buy, grocery items that we buy in the shop. There's one item's gone up from $6 to $7. Another one went from $5 to $5.80. Another one from $3.50 to $4. And another one again from $4.20 to $4.90. So these are increases, and now I can sort of make some adjustments around this, but nonetheless that cost of living is increasing at a rate of knots now, and it's going. And politicians are denying it, but the globalists are inflicting it on us and forcing on us without our consent, and our politicians are meekly, in fact not meekly, eagerly and aggressively going along with this globalist project to reduce our standard of living. And a prime minister that was concerned about the declining standard of living wasn't towing the globalist line, so they just got rid of him. An elected prime minister. No, you're out, buddy. You're not used to us. We're the globalists. We're in charge around here. Just because you're elected by the people to be prime minister of the country doesn't mean squat to us. You're out of here, buddy. Fuck off. So this is there's a combination of factors at work here, and it's more nuanced than just people working age on or not on some sort of disability allowance here. So we need to sort of categorise that. Now, as with anything today, the expenditure, all government expenditures are being prioritised on the basis of, are they furthering and assisting and enabling the globalist project, ideologically or otherwise? Because if they're not, then if it's filling potholes in the road, sorry, too bad. So their interest is in furthering the globalist project, and all money that's being spent, has that in mind and must be prioritised on that basis. It's social engineering value rather than it's actually net value to the citizenry. So a lot of the disability benefits and these things are really built around that. They're not built around actual disability, but again, how to engage in social engineering projects and the like. So I just want to talk about this. Why are so many people on this pension or this disability payment or long-term sickness, call it what you will? There's a few things that the increase in jobs. It's a lot of people are pointing to around the world. Fake economists are saying, well, look at the increase in number of jobs in the Western world since globalization began. Isn't that proof that it's working? Isn't it proof it creates jobs? Isn't it proof that it's wonderful, that it's fantastic, and so on? Well, not really. Let's just have a look at this. The amount of jobs that are low paying, that is minimum wage jobs, there's been a huge explosion in those jobs, minimum wage jobs, particularly minimum wage jobs where they're packaged up with, third world peasants are brought into the West and they're put up 20 to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, but bunk beds, specially made 3 or 4 high, and this sort of thing. They're put in those sort of accommodation. They're washing dishes or doing some shit job, flipping burgers, and they're being given food. They're given a few burgers a day to eat. They're given their accommodation. That's all packaged up in their income. So they're being given 30 or 40, 50 bucks a week, say, to themselves. All the rest is really written off in the miasma of benefits they're supposedly gaining. So there's been an explosion in those sort of jobs. Now, the average, if you look at the average wage now, how many people are making the average or less, or the median, or depending on just how you want to crunch the numbers, that the number of people falling sort of below the median or below the average when you relate it to cost of living, there's now very few, less than 25% of jobs, are really paying above what we would typically call in purchasing power terms the average wage. So, and that's declining rapidly. Now, the economy, Western economies have an inability to create well-paying jobs now, but this incredible ability to create artificially low-paying jobs. But in return for this low-paying job sector, they're not subject to market competition for their inputs for doing business. Their cost of labour and employee benefits and employee conditions, that's all being thrown out the window. But I'd say we're probably 20, 25 years away from being third world in employment conditions. It's certainly heading there fast. And the people can do nothing about it. They've got no representatives anymore. The politicians here just work for the globalists. They're not working for the people or supporting the people or looking out for them or anything like that at all. Far from it. Even the trade unions have sold out, and they now have become globalist employees as well. So the fact is that for the local people who lived in Australia before the mass migration started, they have and at the lower end of the scale, the entry-level wage, difference between the entry-level wage and the cost of pursuing an entry-level wage job and receiving a disability benefit or pension, whatever you want to call it, sickness benefit. There's a little bit difference there. So there's hardly any incentive for these people to go to work. And if you look at the cost of traveling to and from work for a lot of these people, by the time they've paid that and they've paid buying a sandwich at the local shop, the things like that, just the cost of going to work, having clothes in good condition that they can wear that makes them look somewhat respectable. These sort of all that cost of traveling and arriving at work in some sort of presentable state. They by the time they spent the money on that, they've actually got less money in their pocket. So they're working a 40-hour week, 50-hour week, depending on what sector of the economy they're in. They're working at least a 40-hour week, and in return they're getting a standard of living that's lower than if they were receiving the disability pension. Just looking at the other side, or carrying on from that, if they're getting in the gig economy casual employment with variable hours, 1 week they're getting 10 hours, the next they're getting 25, the one after 15, then 30, and then 3 hours after that, and so on. They're not allowed to access any government payment, unemployment benefit, sickness benefit, whatever. They can't access that benefit, even though they're subject to a very variable income range. they can get enough to live on in 1 week, but the 3 or 4 weeks after they haven't got enough. But because they're getting some sort of money, they can't apply for the government benefits, so they don't, and they can't. So rather than give up the reliable, dependable, it's there every week government benefit in return for a variable amount of hours, they never know what they're going to make, and they think, I'll stick with the government benefit. So this is where, there's a massive incentive to stay on these sickness benefits and disability benefits. A massive incentive to stay on. And why not? I mean, I would if I was in that situation. So to them, so getting employment is given the uncertainty of it, particularly casual gig type economy employment, then they're in there's just the risk is just too high. So they're tending to stay on these payments. Now there are some people with disabilities, but now on the other side of it, the government is using the money, the disability money, what's supposedly there to protect people with disabilities, to engage in social engineering. So they'll go to, say, a local sports club that's all volunteers and that sort of thing. So the government will go to them and say, okay, well, we'll give you some funding, but you have to have 3 blind black lesbians in your sports club, and everyone else has to then change how they behave to tiptoe around these 3 blind black lesbians. And if you do that, we'll give you the money. But if you don't do it, you won't get any money. So effectively, they're bribing the the officials in these sports clubs to engage in race and race, gender hustling, and then they're billing that out under the disability thing. Now here's one sports club where they have a blind lesbian going there, and she gets given two people to drive like a minivan, sort of limo type minivan thing, to drive her there, and then they have to stay with her. Then she has to have the care. So this costs. It's equity. She wants to. Why can't she go and do sports? The fact she's blind and a lesbian and handicapped and everything. Who cares? We want equity here. We're promoting equity, and are you against that, you fucking fascist Nazi? So under the guise of equity and so on, and well, she's got a disability. Why can't she live a normal life? Then government funds are being thrown at these sports clubs to say, well, you have to stop all forms of merit in your sports club, being the best team and the hardest training and the most capable and winning the trophies. That's all by the by now. You have to tiptoe around these black lesbians, and they have to be in your team. If they're not in your team, then you can kiss goodbye to the government funding. And the funding may not be vast and generous, but if you're just an ordinary working class guy, and the government comes along and says, we'll give you $100,000 for the year, but you have to do this. That's a lot of money. And not all, but many people are being corrupted and bought off by this. So really the whole industry is used to enable the globalist project as far as to undermine standards of merit in the community, and particularly where there's white male dominated sports, where the reason it's white male dominated is because merit was the standard. So if you can eradicate the merit, then you can eradicate the straight white males that would appreciate merit. So it's the equivalent of undermining probity in sport, if you like, and it's used shamelessly, I think, by the government, under Western governments, globalist controlled Western governments, under the guise of equity and this sort of thing, but also under the guise we're only looking after people with disabilities. So I think there's a number of factors at play here and combining, but the reality is that when you got 8% of your fucking workforce on alleged disability benefits, then the bar of evidence they have to meet to declare disability must be very low. We've got an astonishing number of people with disabilities that I mean, how did that ever come to be? Now, I should add that something like 20% of the people on these disabilities have a so-called anxiety disability. So they're just unusually anxious people, and they're they're being paid to sit at home and do nothing on the basis that they're anxious. I mean, for fuck's sake. So that's just some of the wider issues around this. But it seems to be a Western world gig, and wherever you see the globalists in control, then this same pattern is playing out, which suggests or clearly indicates, in my view, that it's something that the globalists are using to undermine the fabric of Western society. You've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.